What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I'm going to break down what's going on with the overall market, what's going on with CPI coming out very soon, and how these things could affect Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm also going to break down some very important data that's coming out and what you should be watching for going into tomorrow. But before I break anything down, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 6 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks plus 6 months of level 2 data. If you deposit $25,000 or more, you're guaranteed 70 free stocks plus 12 months of level 2 data. These offers end in just about 8 days from now, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the market. Looking at SPY, this thing was up 0.43% for the day on Friday. It managed to close above that 460 resistance, which is a very, very good sign for the bulls. But the question is, how on earth will this week end up playing out, and what data is coming out very soon to affect this rally? Well, on Monday, right? On Monday, we have the consumer inflationary expectations coming out. This will give us a good gauge of how consumer sentiment is looking. Then at 11:30, we have the three-year notes auction coming out. This is going to help us look at how the auctions are looking amidst the current interest rates. So around the hour of 11 a.m. Eastern time, expect a little bit more volatility. It may not be that crazy since the stat is very minor, but we could see like a pop here and there and like a pop and drop or something like that. So just be prepared for that just to be safe. Then at about 1 p.m., we have the 10-year notes auction, the 3-month bill auction. This could cause some volatility, but nothing too crazy once again. I just wanted to note these just in case you guys like see a pop and you're just curious. So just be prepared for these hours, 11 o'clock a.m. during the hour of that time, then 1 p.m. tomorrow Eastern Standard Time. We could see some moves here and there, but most of the day is likely not going to be that crazy. The reason for that is because on Tuesday, right, the day after, we have CPI coming out. We have core CPI and CPI, the data year over year and month over month. This is all going to be coming out an hour before the market opens on Tuesday. So make sure you're prepared for this as well. This is going to be absolutely massive, and we'll see how this ends up affecting the markets. Now, one thing worth mentioning is that when we look at the data for the options chain on SPY, we're continuing to see lots and lots of these shorts continuing to short the market. And the question is, when are they going to be right, or are they just going to continue to be wrong? And will the market makers just continue to squeeze these shorts? Well, we saw it happen on Friday. For the upcoming week, for Friday, we have about 4.5 million of these puts expiring, and we have just under 2 million calls. That's a 2.44 puts to call ratio. The majority of people still have shorts. They're still betting the market's going to come down. And this is why you have to be very careful, because when the market makers see this, they're once again, they could be just playing their games and they could just try to continue to squeeze the shorts. Okay. And then on the week after that, right? The week after this coming Friday, December 22nd, we have a lot of shorts again. We have a 4.35 put to call ratio. We have over 600,000 puts and just under 1.4 140,000 calls. So the majority of positions are in puts. Once again, it's just continuing for the rest of the year like this for every single Friday. And then we're going to be watching to see how this ends up affecting our volatility. What do the market makers plan this time around? Now, with that being said, guys, we're now just going to focus on the charts. I'm going to try to be kind of quick with this video because I know a lot of people are doing different things. So let's start off with SPY. SPY closed above this 460 area, which is a very, very good sign. Our support below this is going to be around this 458 area. Our orange trend line is now going to be very close to like this 456 area. I don't see us dropping that hard, but for tomorrow, generally before the CPI days, we tend to not see that much volatility unless, the market is already excited about what's about to happen. So for support, watch the 458 range. Also, this 460 area has some support. We just barely broke it, so we'll see how it holds. Then we have 462 as resistance. Make sure you watch that as key resistance. If we break that, there's not much stopping this thing from going all the way up to 467. All right, so what could happen tomorrow? We might just see a consolidation day, because generally before CPI comes out, we tend to see some consolidation, sideways price action, some hedging here and there, and we start to see repositioning amongst these big funds. So the market might not do that much. We might see a little pop when we open. Our resistance is going to be at 462, a drop back down. We might just see the market trade sideways, just remain range bound, because we're going to get very tight, right? If you bring up the Bollinger Bands, you could see, and the Bollinger Bands really show this very, very well, at least on most of the days. If I just pull this up, you'll notice that The market has a tendency of getting very tight on certain days, especially before some big economic data. And then we make a much bigger move before that happens, right? So I know it's a little hard to see on the 1 hour time frame, but you can see like right here, we got a little tight here, then we got this expansion, we got tight here as they were building liquidity, then we got another expansion, and there's another example like right here when we were like consolidating. But so we might see the Bollinger Bands get tighter. So we might see the market just get tighter tomorrow, just remain range bound for some time. Then we might see a big expansion once the CPI report is out. And I find that very, very probable. So that's what I'm seeing for tomorrow. Just some consolidation, a sideways day between support and resistance, not a whole lot. And I think there's going to be a much bigger move starting on Tuesday. And I think that there's a high probability that CPI is going to be decent because I went over the oil data and crude futures and things like that in my video from the weekend. So if you want to see it, just look at my video called the Tuesday Squeeze. I just posted, I think, just yesterday. So watch that video if you want more data about why I think CPI is most likely going to be decent. And ultimately, what I think is going to happen for the next week to 2 weeks is SPY reaching 467. That is my target. If you hide these indicators and just go to like the weekly time frame, I can just show you why I think that, because it's not just based off the chart, but it's based off many different factors. We have this target just looking at the chart right here, and we have that resistance that formed right over here at that 467 area. So we're going to be watching that very carefully. It's forming like a cup and handle like formation. And I think that the chart still looks bullish on the weekly. It has been a long time since this rally started. It's still holding up, and it could go a little further. But don't forget that because there's more room to go up, we should not turn bearish or overly bearish. We should just watch for confirmation and just know that the odds do favor more upside and eventually a test of 467, in my opinion, within the next couple of weeks, if not as soon as this week after CPI comes out. So we'll be watching that very, very carefully. For the QQQ, I'm seeing something very interesting. Now we have this potential rising wedge-like structure that is developing on the chart. It's holding up quite nicely. It is possible that the QQQ kind of like comes down a little bit, retests this like 390.8 to 391 area, just a tiny little 1 point drop or so, and we just consolidate just a little bit like this for tomorrow, and then we could get a breakout eventually by Tuesday and start pushing for like 394 plus or even those higher levels. I think there's a good chance that if we do get some consolidation tomorrow, it could just be the market getting ready for a bigger move to the upside. When we look at Tesla stock, Tesla's looking quite decent as well. I just want to mention that this is what I think is very probable for Tesla. You can see that the resistance is getting tighter, so is our support, and we're just continuing to form this pennant. And I think that Tesla may continue to consolidate for an extended period of time before we get a break to the upside or even the downside, depending on CPI. But I think the odds favor the upside based off the fact that Tesla's holding up, based off how support is looking, and based off the data I went over on Saturday in my previous video about why CPI may be quite decent or even better than what some people are expecting. Now, it could be a surprise, but don't forget, when retail is continuing to try to short the market, when people are still trying to short, they could just continue to push the market higher and higher to turn everyone bullish. And then once people turn bullish, that's when things will switch. But if people keep shorting like this, like I said, the majority of positions on SPY are still puts. They're still trying to short SPY every single week. So the bias still favors the upside. It still is very probable Tesla does something like this. So for Tesla, watch resistance. It's going to depend on the area, but I just want to be clear that that 244 area has some resistance. Down above that, we have like 246, 245, and 246. If we get above 246, we're going to likely try to push up for 250. We have support at this yellow trend line. You're going to be watching this around 241 now. We also have some support at 240. We couldn't even like come back down there, which I'm not really doubting. But if we lose 240, then we could turn a bit more bearish and come down to 238. I don't think that's going to happen though. I think Tesla's going to consolidate for a bit to make a much bigger move starting on Tuesday. For Nvidia stock, I think the chart is starting to look bullish to me. I think that we have a price target of at least 482 because what you could see on Nvidia is that we formed a nice double bottom like formation. We actually got a breakout from this resistance right here. We also have broken this top right here where our wick happened to be, right? So what the market makers did was they formed this wick to grab liquidity before they brought it back down. But since Nvidia came down, it's been holding the yellow trend line very nicely. Let me change the color so it's like easy to distinguish. I'm going to make this blue. The blue trend line is holding up nicely. It's on a nice uptrend, and we managed to break above this resistance past this imbalance. The next imbalance happens to be up here at this 482 area, and I think that Nvidia is going to make its way up. So Nvidia could come down to retest the blue trend line just a little bit, back down to like 472 or so. Even if it comes a little lower, it could still just bounce back up. I think it's going to try to uptrend and respect this trend line for the next couple of days. Tomorrow it might come down, retest the trend line, and trade sideways for a bit in this like 475 area. Could get close to 480, but I'm not 100% sure about tomorrow because we might just see some consolidation before CPI. I anticipate it's just going to be very sideways. I think we're going to get a bullish breakout by Tuesday, and I think that Nvidia is going to try to break above 482, maybe even higher towards this next wick up here at this 487 area later. But for now, just watch 482. I think we may be testing this as soon as Tuesday or Wednesday. For Apple stock, I just want to mention that Apple is still looking quite decent. We do have a rising wedge-like pattern, but remember these don't always play out. They don't always have to be perfect. And I think that Apple could actually backtest this area at this like 195 area just a bit, come back up and just continue to trade sideways and range trade, then I think that Apple's going to push it for 197. And the reason I say that is because when you zoom out of the charts and we push towards the weekly time frame, you will notice that 197 is an area of interest for Apple, as we have a nice cup and handle like formation that's playing out quite nicely. So we have this nice looking formation thus far. It's looking quite decent. It's looking bullish. Weekly looks bullish too, so it's going to likely push higher. So look for Apple to attempt to get back up to 197 very, very soon. Could drop a little bit, retest the yellow trend line at that 195 area, then try to break out for that 197 target. And if anything, I think that Apple is looking more bullish. Now, once we hit 197, we have some tight resistance up there, so just be very careful. But basically, my point is still very consistent that there's more upside coming, and I don't think that Apple is done just yet. So once again, Apple's looking quite good. This could help the market hold up quite nicely. Now I'm just going to be very quick with the rest of the stocks out there. I'm going to be very quick with this part. For SoFi, this is holding up nicely. Look for a little back test. I think it could back test 7.96. It likes to test the 4-hour 20 EMA, so it's going to come down just a little bit, bounce off that 7.96 area and just trade sideways around $8. And then we could get a breakout after CPI. We'll just have to see if that helps the market launch. But the chart does look a little bit more bullish right now. It could, go a little higher as time goes on. We have a nice accumulation phase as we have this bullish price target. So look for a little drop and pop on SoFi. For the IWM or the Russell 2000 for the small caps, I'm actually very bullish on small caps for 2024. But one thing that's worth noting is that we have a tendency of being very similar to SoFi. We like to test our 4-hour 20 EMA. Could come back down to about the 185s by tomorrow. Could test like 185.5, then bounce off that and just trade sideways between 185 and 186. And then I think that it's eventually going to break out and start pushing even higher for like 188. So I think this chart looks bullish nonetheless. We could see some consolidation tomorrow, but I think it's going to break out and still see some more upside later on. And I think it's going to fly, especially on Tuesday. So look for some consolidation tomorrow, then a breakout. And I think it's going to eventually reach this target of 190. So could we, back test the 185s again? Yeah, it's still a possibility. But then I think it's going to eventually push it for 190 plus and just continue to remain bullish overall. On Microsoft, we were talking about this thing coming down a bit. It did come down to 362. Didn't quite meet our 359 target, but it did come down a little bit. Now it's trying to bounce, and now it's looking like the chart's showing some life. Tomorrow we might see a consolidation day again on Microsoft as we've been range bound between 375 and about this 368 area. I think it might actually try to push a little bit since we have a nice double bottom. Might try to push a little bit more towards 378 and come back down to where we are and get a very flat day. Then I think that Microsoft's going to start breaking out on Tuesday. So I think some sideways price action tomorrow would be healthy. Then some more upside going into Tuesday and beyond. On AMD, I think that the chart looks like it might actually retrace a little bit, might actually backtest this breakout, this imbalance right here at like 126.5 to 127, then bounce after that and start pushing up a little higher towards 132. So a little drop and pop looks very probable on AMD. It did, pump quite a bit, so I wouldn't be surprised if it backtested our support. To add on to this, I just want to mention that the VIX, this thing attempted to break out, but it failed once again. No sign of the VIX breaking out yet. It's still looking kind of weak. It's about to get a bearish cross in the 4-hour PPO. Maybe the VIX trades sideways around this $12 area, the 12 area for now. And we'll be watching this very carefully. I'm not really seeing much for it. It's looking kind of weak again. This is just because, the market's showing strength. The dollar index is still holding up, but it's failing to break out of the 200 EMA. It could actually come back down to retest our 103.8 area, then bounced. So watch that very carefully. On Coinbase, this thing made a very, very nice move to the upside. Going to be watching this thing attempts to make its way up to at least 148.5. If we break that, it could start pushing more. But let me first mention that on the daily time frame, let me switch to the daily. Hold on, where's my daily chart? Here's my daily. On the daily time frame, we have another very, very strong looking candlestick. No sign of this thing stopping just yet. We could come down and then eventually start breaking out, but I think that we're eventually going to push up towards our weekly 200 EMA at 168. So I have a target of 168 on Coinbase. I think we're going to get to up there. Then we're going to see some tight resistance. So look for a little drop, maybe a back test like 145 or so, consolidates a bit, then it breaks out higher to 168, and that's what I'm seeing for coin. For Google, this thing closed kind of flat again, made an attempt to bounce. We have a nice inverse head and shoulder structure right here. I wouldn't be surprised if Google basically does the same thing. I think it's going to bounce very, very soon. It's going to likely hold support. What could happen is we might come back down here. We do have a gap down to 132.95. Don't know if it's going to drop that much since we're actually turning a bit more bullish on the daily. Could backtest one of these EMAs. I think it's going to test 135 and then try to bounce. It could try to bounce off that unless there's bad news that causes it to break. But I think it's going to test 135, then try to bounce. If it loses that, then we could fill the gap and then bounce. So it's got to be one of those two. It's going to drop a little bit to 135, then bounce. But if it loses that because of bad news, it could come down towards 133 and then bounce. So it's got to be one of those two. I'm not 100% sure as it depends on the news and such. But look for a little drop and bounce. It could drop a little bit more if support fails and then bounce later on anyways. On Amazon, the daily chart's looking quite flat right now. We're going to be looking for this thing to attempt to get back up. I was saying that we had like a head and shoulders like pattern, but the daily's turning a bit more bullish. And I just want to mention that we're going to look at the weekly. The weekly looks like we could see another pop. The weekly's starting to turn bullish. We have a bullish looking candlestick on the weekly. We might see a backtest of 150 soon. Amazon looks quite primed. I think it's going to retrace towards 146.5, trade sideways, and eventually break out for 150. And for Meta has an attempt and a potential on the weekly to push more. You're going to be looking for 340 to be tested. We could backtest 328 and bounce and then go up to about 340, but that's all I'm seeing for now. We're going to be watching this at least as time goes on. So that's it for this one, guys. Thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely incredible weekend. Enjoy some football and do what you have to do. I'm not expecting like the real move to happen until Tuesday. So tomorrow doesn't matter that much. What's going to matter more is Tuesday when CPI comes out. Then we have the FOMC meeting on Wednesday. So we'll be watching for all of that. But with that being said, I think that we might see some consolidation in the markets. It would be completely healthy if we did so, and then a breakout to even more upside as I'm still bullish on SPY. I think SPY is going to reach 467 soon. I think Tesla's going to break to the 250s plus. I think that we're going to see more of these shorts get squeezed, but what's going to help that is going to depend on CPI, of course. I think CPI will most likely be aligned with expectations, if not better than expected. I made a video about that previously, so if you're interested in finding out why, you can just watch my previous video. And with that being said, I think that there's more upside potential in the markets. SPY closed above 460, which is another bullish signal. The market could try to keep going. All right, guys, excuse me. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow morning. Thank you, and peace out.